Yep.
And we're live.
Awesome. What is going on, Ridge Runner Nation? We are back for another Ridge Runners live show. This is our first of 2 live shows this week. We've got John and I holding it down. We got 2 guests on the show tonight who did some pretty incredible things this past weekend. They both competed in the Quarantine Backyard Ultra and absolutely crushed it. I'm excited to hear about their adventures as well as their thoughts on the controversy surrounding the end of the race. Without further ado, Micheal, Owen, Gabe Rainwater, how are you guys?
Doing well.
Good.
Thanks for coming on again. Gabe, I know you were just on a couple weeks ago. We were super excited to get you back on this week to talk all things about your recent adventure. Micheal, obviously, always a pleasure having you on as well. What are you guys drinking tonight?
Good, Michael.
You guys always know I'm not going to have anything that exciting, but I did just pull out a Simple Truth organic seltzer water.
Nice.
Tri-berry, mixed berry.
And I'm drinking a Woolly Pig IPL Heinz.
There you go. John.
Like 0.6 miles from my house.
Nice. I am.
If this was next week, I would have had some homemade kombucha, but I don't have it
Nice.
ready yet. It's still fermenting.
Fermenting. We'll have to get you on again and have something exciting to drink. I
I have a name for it.
some Mystic Mama over here. Classic here in Jack Hughes.
I just had a little Miller Lite delivered to me, so we're rolling tonight. Obviously, you guys ran the Quarantine Backyard Ultra, absolutely crushed it out there. This race was kind of unique. Obviously, it being a virtual race, it's a little different than a regular Backyard Ultra where everyone comes together and it's kind of one central event. The virtual aspect of it made it a little different. Obviously, there was a Zoom feed and whatnot. But take us back to the beginning when the first time you heard about the race and like when did you sign up for it and what was the appeal to run this race for you guys? And Micheal, you can start us off.
So I heard about it. I guess it was like probably the same day that I had to cancel my Backyard Ultra that I direct, the Ohio's Backyard Ultra, which is I want to give a shout out to my own race here, postponed until November. So like about that time that races were being canceled, March, I think it was like March 14th, somewhere around that date that I had to cancel. Some virtual races were popping up, and I think I actually saw it from Harvey Lewis on his Facebook. He posted that he was going to be participating in this Quarantine Backyard Ultra, and I just popped on the website on that same day that I learned about it and saw that it was free, read the rules. It seemed appealing, seemed legit and everything, and some top runners were already signed up, including Harvey. And so I just registered without even really knowing if I would do it or not, just because it was free. There was nothing to hold me accountable or anything. And so that's how I learned about it. And I just wanted to put my name on a registration list, and then I had a couple more weeks to decide if I wanted to do it or not.
Definitely. Gabe.
I found out about it. I was having just finished my 100-miler around my backyard. And it popped up, and it was, Quarantine Backyard. And I was like, it seems kind of silly. It might be a bit of a joke. But I was like, well, I don't know. We'll see. And then 24 hours later, I texted my wife and I said, don't hate me, but this looks really fun. Can I run? And I said, and she was like, well, we'll look into it. So then I signed up, and she helped me figure out the Zoom feed and all that stuff. So
I told my wife about it about a week before, and then I didn't tell her I was doing it until about 10 p.m. on Friday night. Because I hadn't committed to it until Friday night, and then I sort of just got real, like I saw all the stuff that was posted about it. I was like, all right, I'm kind of excited about it. And so I confirmed with her. She was in bed already, and so I had to get my stuff ready. And so thankfully she was cool with it, but I don't think she thought I was going to go that far.
There's already some Ridge Runner Nation members fighting about the end of the race in the chat, and we will get there eventually.
Guys, settle down. This is about Gabe and I. Come on.
we will get there. It's awesome to see. Obviously, Michael, you said you hopped in the race, kind of decided to actually run it last minute. So what was your preparation like mentally and physically going into the race?
So yeah, I did decide like for sure the night before, but the previous grocery trip, obviously like with the pandemic and the sort of the self-isolation stuff, I haven't been out too much. I've probably left the house. I've actually left the house twice in the last 3 weeks. I did stock up a little bit extra with like stuff that I thought I might use for the race. So I had like, like typical race food stuff that I might have, chips and, stuff like that, that I wouldn't normally buy. So sort of prepped that way. Training wise, obviously, like no one really was able to prep unless they were previously planning to do a backyard ultra like Gabe. But this was my first backyard ultra that I participated in. I've followed this format and this really like this kind of the last few year phenomenon. I got to direct one, so I learned. I've learned a lot, and I've followed it, and it's always intrigued me. So I guess I've just kind of prepped mentally over the years. Sort of always have had an idea of how I would approach it, and so that just kind of formulated itself. And that first day of running in my mind was just like a way to test out the waters, and then that's when you figured out. But yeah, the prep in terms of like course and my stuff at the house, I just kind of wrapped it up, or I just kind of like picked it all up the night before and gathered it in between loops the first few hours. The course, I basically know all of my mileage is out from my house from years and years of running it. So I just was able to kind of measure off that 0.08. It was an out and back course, a couple different courses. And so really not much prep. And then like the mental prep, I think I just did that during the race from the competition side of things. It didn't really seem like a competition at first. And then like once you started seeing that like 1,500 participant number dwindle down to like 500 to 100 people to 70 people to, then eventually like the top 24. That's like that process is what got me into the competitive nature of the event.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gabe, before you dive into your preparation, Amy Christians in the chat said you guys are all awesome. And Conrad Yoder said, hey, Gabe, congrats on the PR. Kind of spoiling it a little bit for us, but wanted to make sure we got those out there. So Gabe, obviously you ran 100 miles in your backyard 2 weeks ago. I'm sure you didn't do much preparation for this physically. What did you do mentally to prepare for this?
Well, I was sort of been mentally preparing for Ohio backyard because I was signed up to do that, and I did that last year. I also ran Bob's backyard and Biggs's backyard. So I've had some experience. So like as far as my nutrition and everything, I already had that basically ready to go for Ohio backyard. I've been to the store several weeks before and stocked up. So then mentally, the backyard ultra is terrifying to me. I really have a hard time, like the couple of days leading up to it, because there's no end, and I know like really no matter what happens, there's going to be a little bit of me that's going to be disappointed. Like whenever it ends, I'll be disappointed. So it's really it's a little bit of a struggle mentally, more so just not having that finish line. So, and then my course at first, I was going to run some of my trail because I was really concerned about running pavement the whole entire time. So I actually had like a 2 mile loop that I was going to do twice, sort of like Ohio backyard. And then I was going to do that during the day, and then at night I was going to switch to my road. And then I kind of was like, that trail just sucks time. It's really, you're putting out the same effort, but you're coming in. So I was just going to roll the dice. I decided I'm going to roll the dice and run on the road the whole time. And my course had about 450 feet of elevation gain. over the 4 miles. And it was really neat. Like the whole time I was running, I was like, I've run this course from my house for 15, 16 years, like my whole running life. And I'm competing against the world, like in my backyard. And it was a really neat, kind of surreal experience. So
I agree. That's same with you, Gabe. I grew up here. My parents live across the road from where I live now, and I've been a runner for about 16 years now, and so I've literally ran on these back roads for my entire running life. And I've ran them on probably all parts of the day, from in between, like 4 a.m. maybe to past midnight. But this was kind of cool because I literally saw it every hour of the day. Sort of saw the birds wake up, the woodpeckers start popping up in the morning and dusk, fall on. And so I thought that was kind of cool and just kind of surreal, like you said. Really neat, really, really neat.
Like I saw like bush light cans would appear like overnight. Like you'd be riding along, and one loop there'd be nothing out there, then there'd be 3 empties in the middle of the road, and you're like, oh boy.
Totally. Also, roadkill would appear.
Yeah. And the neighbors surprisingly never sort of really caught on, but they were like.
I had a couple neighbors. My wife posted about what I was doing, and she's a school teacher, and a couple of parents of her kids saw her post, and they live along the route. And eventually, like pretty late at night, I thought it was like past midnight maybe, the kids went out and told me to not give up. And so that's kind of cool. But they had been wondering what I had been doing for like the last 30 hours.
And my direct neighbors, they knew what I was doing, and so they were putting out signs.
Nice. Yeah.
Cheer stuff. So
cheers.
It was awesome. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's great, guys. Yeah, I mean, it kind of sums up the experience a little bit more. Obviously, when you're at an actual backyard ultra, you have the fans there, you've got the people cheering for you, but to even have that aspect of it in your guys' own routes, in your own backyards, that's pretty awesome. Walk us through the early hours of the day. The first bell goes off. What are you guys thinking? Obviously, it's so early in the day. Take us through the early loops. Day one, Gabe, you can start us off.
I hate the early loops. I mean, it's like there's nothing. It's just sort of boredom. And like the first bell goes off and they started and you're just like, well, okay, I'm gonna do this, and you just run and come back, and then after about 2 or 3 loops, it starts moving a lot quicker. And I tend to have my roughest patches around 50 miles and 75 miles. So that's like I think at 50 miles was the first time I laid down and really had to stretch out. And sort of emotionally too, like that was 9 o'clock. So it was dark, and it was like looking the prospects of, the night coming up. And then 75 miles is always rough because it's just kind of like, that's the point where it's kind of setting in on you. And then I just know once I get through 75, then sun comes up and I hit 100. And then, through that second day is pretty easy sailing. And then I'm really, really nervous. Like that second night, that was the farthest I've gone into a second night. I went maybe a loop and a half in complete dark. And it wasn't as bad as I was expecting. But that's something mentally I need to work on, I think. Just being able to get through a second night. Because I haven't been able to figure out how to sleep. I haven't slept at all during my backyards. I can't seem to, I'll have even 15 minutes. I still can't sleep.
No, Mike Wardian went for almost 3 days and didn't sleep a wink. So I don't know. I think it's hard too.
Yeah, I don't really think it's necessary to sleep. But it's something.
It would feel good. Yes. Yeah. So obviously, like Gabe's got some experience doing this. I got to watch him last year do it for the first time. And I didn't have an approach, but like the early miles, the early loops, I mean, were pretty slow. Not necessarily just by pace. Pace was slow too, but just like the way time warped was, it took forever. Luckily, like as we got into the later stages, over a day, like I thought the hours went by fast. Like I was like, wow, I'm back to my house already. So it was tough. Just like literally, you're as fresh as can be. You're running 11 and a half, 12-minute pace on fresh legs. Like that's somewhat challenging. It's amazing how much harder that feels later on. But for me, it was strange because I had some of my worst miles in the very first half day. So I came into this race with an Achilles injury, Achilles tendonitis type injury, my left leg, and that's sort of the reason I waited to commit to this race. Because I hadn't ran over 6 miles in the last 3 weeks. But I had some good runs. It felt pretty good, and it hadn't hurt me for a few days. And I just thought, with the free entry and everything to this race, like I could literally just pull out after 5 hours if I needed to. Like I could, based off of my previous 3 weeks, like I knew when it was going to hurt pretty early on a run. And it was pretty good for like the first 3 hours, like no pain, no tightness, no stiffness. And then like the last 2 miles of my 4th hour, it just had excruciating pain shooting through my leg. Like, oh man, I might have to quit here soon. Which I was going to be fine with, just because there was nothing on the line for me. But like my course of action was, I got back to the house, I rolled, I put some lotion on my legs and massaged my calf and massaged my Achilles and massaged my heel and stuff. And it would go away for another hour or two, then it would pop back another couple hours later. And then it just kind of went that way for the first 12 hours, even first 20 hours. And so that was kind of what I was focusing on. Once I sort of committed to be like, okay, I'm going to push through this Achilles injury, I was committed to taking care of it between loops, in conjunction with like getting food and getting, nutrition and fuel. But I was mainly spending 10 minutes or more every loop massaging and rolling out my leg, and that would get me by for a few more hours. And then I had this crazy wild streak of luck, in my opinion, of like 15 or 16 hours where I didn't feel my Achilles, didn't hinder me at all. It was completely flexible, full range of motion, no leg stiffness through the night into like hour 30 something. And so then I kind of got off of that maintenance plan, and ultimately kind of just, it came back right around hour 150 or hour or mile 150. I'm forgetting what hour that is now, 36, I guess. It came back with vengeance and like basically crippled me. And then I hobbled along for like 3 more hours and decided that it probably wasn't going to get better like it did earlier. So that's kind of how I don't know if that was the question or not, but that's sort of the way my hours went throughout the course of the race.
Yeah. So on that recovery part, do you think if you would have kept doing the religious routine of stretching and rolling, you think that would have maybe lasted a little bit longer than what it did?
I don't know. It's tough to go back. I mean, I was still doing it a little bit, but I think I got a little confident about how good it was feeling. I was like, okay, maybe all that tightness and stuff worked its way out after running so much. And like it was crazy how much like my opposite leg was hurting worse for a while.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think it was inevitable, perhaps. And I needed to worry about other things like resting and food and just, eventually I couldn't just like massage my leg for 10 minutes every hour. It was going to use like other things were going to get more important.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's awesome. One thing that I kind of was curious about, Micheal, obviously, after knowing you for a little bit, I know that this is one format of race that you've been eyeing for a while now, maybe dating back to 2016, 2017. You've had your eyes on this for a long time now. But with that being said, you haven't gone that pace for that period of time. I think your slowest 100-mile finish was Bighorn in 26 hours. So the time on feet for you was a lot different than Gabe coming into these events, who has done multiple backyard ultras at this point. What was you kind of
30-hour like where I pulled apart and been laying on my back quite a bit.
Those are also the best. But what was kind of your mindset with that? Obviously, extra time on feet. Obviously, you're not kind of used to that. How'd you have to like switch your mindset to slow down as much as you did?
I don't know. I don't think I ever have struggled with that, to be honest. Like, yeah, I guess some people consider me a faster guy in the ultra scene with, you know, some sub 6 50-milers or some fast 100-milers, but I've never had a problem with running slow. I've never burn out from a pace issue. It's usually my best races. I ease into it, and so I guess, like, yeah, it was hard. It was just like hard because you had to focus on slowing down early on, but it didn't seem awkward or anything to me, I guess. I don't know. I guess, yeah, like, you know, like you said, I have been eyeing this type of race for a long time. I've never really felt like I should do it. And so I guess with all the race cancellations, I didn't have anything to lose with like recovery, because, and maybe it won't maybe it won't take that long to recover. You know, maybe it would have, maybe if I went like 250 miles and not 150, but you know, like I was going to do some faster, shorter races this spring, or like 50K distances, I guess, but those are canceled. I'm thinking maybe my June races might be canceled. And so there was no reason to hold back, I guess. I don't know. I hope the June races are canceled, but yeah, I don't know. There was no reason to like not do it at this time, I guess. And that's kind of why I ended up kind of getting in that mind frame of, okay, like let's push through some pain. Let's get to the, eventually I came to the idea of like, okay, let's get past the point of comfort. 24 hours for 100 miles for me over the weekend was comfortable. You know, muscle wise, pain wise. And so I wanted to get past that point and get into that range of mental fatigue and you know, physical fatigue and stuff. So I got there, and like Gabe said earlier, like it's always disappointing. You know, my last lap was 58 minutes. I could have easily walked back out the door and probably gone several more hours, even with a bum leg. Like I was walking that 58-minute lap and just had to run like the last quarter mile just to make it in time, and it still got me under an hour. Maybe I could have, and maybe my Achilles would have came back around. Who knows? So it is disappointing, and that's kind of what leaves us hanging, making us want to come back and do it again. Is like, oh man, I could have easily done more than 162. So yeah, it's a cool format just for that reason. I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to it. It's an easy way to get to your comfort zone and past it, and then it always leaves you wanting more.
Definitely. Yeah. There's a couple awesome questions in the chat right now. Annie Lang asks, Mike, what surprised you most about running the backyard format, even after race directing a backyard race? And does it want to make you to do another one? I feel like that answer is going to be a pretty passionate yes, but
yeah, I'd love to do another one. I'm on the wait list for the Big Dogs Backyard Ultra. I have no idea how that wait list progresses or where I'm at on it, but you know, if I got the call from Laz to do it in October, well, who knows what the race schedule will be. Like the races that I direct postpone and stuff will be pretty heavy at that time, but I'd probably take that call and go down there in a true format. What surprised me about the Backyard Ultra running it, I guess what surprised me, I was thinking about this, is that things can go bad real fast, and you might be on cloud 9 at hour 35 but then 36, you're like questioning whether you even like go back home. Like, okay, let's just stay out here to turn around. So I guess that surprised me a bit, is just how unpredictable your own body was, and that you shouldn't get too confident in yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Daniel Rainwater asked Gabe, how does it feel to be a legend?
I don't know. Yeah. I guess it feels good. You want to call me a legend? You can call me a legend.
You're definitely a legend, Gabe.
Well, thank you.
I think it's interesting, Michael, that you said you would take that call from Laz, because I know a couple other people took a call from Laz over this past weekend at the last hour of the race over at Personal Peak Endurance, but we'll get into that in a little bit. It's just absolutely crazy still. Take us through the last couple loops and just the last, basically your last push. Like, how did it end for you? Obviously, Gabe, you set a new PR. Michael, you went 162 miles. Gabe, you went 154, I believe. Take us through the final moments and why did you shut it down?
So I shut it down basically because I mean my body just kind of shut down. My course was, I had a big hill, or my biggest hill coming back into my aid station, and so I was coming into the lap. I was about 3 miles into my last loop, and I was still doing like a 12 and a half minute mile. I was hurting, but it was manageable. I hit the last hill and I walked up the hill, and it just kind of took it out of me. And then like my feet and my legs were just like needles running on, like glass or whatever you want to just. And then it's like, and then for me, it's like, well, which is one thing I have to work on, is like, if I feel like this right now, like I could go out for another loop, but I'm just going to feel like that again. And then, so what's the point of one more loop or two more loops? But that, like, you really don't know. I could have stood back up, because I came in probably 55 minutes and I laid down for, a minute or two, and I was like, I'm done. That's good. And partly it's because I had a PR 154, but I was laying there, I was looking at Michael on the screen. I was like, man, Michael's going to beat me. I was like, I really wanted to beat Michael. But I was like, it's all right. It's all right.
It's all right to lose to Michael.
Yeah,
so this is off topic, but I'll be honest, like Gabe and Harvey, two Ohio guys, were big motivators for me, and my own backyard ultra. I was like, okay, Tim Crow went 123 last year. Now I'm past him. The winner last year was 129 at my backyard ultra. I just got past him, and then like Harvey dropped out. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I said, man, how long is Gabe gonna go? And I was thinking, I knew his PR was 150. I was like, I bet if anything, he's at least gonna want to get past 150.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And I'll be honest, I was starting to hurt about that time.
Yeah.
Like, so to get back on that question, Wes, it was smooth sailing for me from like 1 a.m. until whenever hour 36 was, and it right. I'm a little lost in the time. I just was running every hour, but it was smooth sailing for like a long time for me. No pain, no stomach issues. And then like I knew 150 was approaching, and things were still good up until 150, mile 150, hour 36. And I started feeling some stomach nauseous feelings, couldn't hold things down quite as well. And then like I was saying earlier, my Achilles literally just out of the blue. I was literally trying to conserve energy by walking this hill that I had been running. I was like, okay, I'm going to walk this hill this time, because like I want to conserve energy. And like literally a couple strides into my walk, I felt my Achilles just kind of seize up. I was like, are you serious? Right when I'm trying to do something helpful for myself, it actually backfired. And so that was like on that hour 36 is when that happened. And like I said, like the Achilles thing just really, really got bad from then on out. And then like I was looking to maybe, okay, drop out, I'm done here. And then Gabe announced his departure like 10 seconds before the bell went off. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go out for a few more. and that actually motivated me some more, at least like a few more laps. And that's, even though I was in pain, I was like, okay, I can just use that motivation for momentum. And but then it got real tough. Like the Achilles moved up to my calf, to my hip, to my back, and then it just caused like full body, not pain, just restriction, basically. Like walking was pain. Like walking was hard to like extend normal walking motion, whatever that is.
I love the pass off that happened. That's probably the best, like most like honorable, humble way to go out too. You're like in pain, laying down, dying, and you're like, keep it going, Micheal. Like represent Ohio. I was like, which was great too, because mind you, Ohio had what, 3 runners in the top 24 or 25, whatever it was.
It was like the top 15, I think,
top 15, wherever it got down to. But it was like Ohio was like where it was at for the longest time. Crazy.
Yeah, considering it was people from all around the world.
Alrighty, guys, I think it's time to finally jump into a little bit of the controversy that ended this race. Obviously, almost a day later, Mike Wardian and Radek Brunner were battling it out. For those of you that do not know, Mike Wardian won, running 262 miles, I believe. His last loop was 7:20 pace, just absolutely blitzed it, which is just incredible to think about. But it's kind of crazy how those events played out. Were both of you watching that when that happened, or how did you hear about the controversy when it happened? Michael, you can start us off.
Yes, I was not watching. I was in bed. But you guys, this group chat I'm in with Wesley, that started going crazy. And so I logged on real fast and watched the aftermath of the announcement. And that's what I was doing. Yes. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I wasn't paying. I mean, once I dropped out, I just stopped paying attention basically to all of it. I had a couple of buddies who were like texting me different stuff, asking me if I was paying attention. I was like, yeah. I don't care. I mean, I was like, those guys are crazy. Like, you're just kind of I'm just disappointed. It's like, I want to, I wish I could be going that far too. So once I'm done, I'm done. I don't really
I did think about, I fell asleep pretty quickly after I finished. I got a shower and got in bed and was zonked out until I finished at midnight, and I was, I slept from like 1 a.m. until 10 a.m. pretty soundly. And, I looked back, when I woke up, I was like, all right, how many's left? Where did people drop out at? And I think if I would have just made it 3 or 4 more hours, I would have been the final 3. So that's like another reason that it stings. It's like, dang, that would have been cool. And like, because
know how people are feeling. I mean, like you, Michael, like, I dropped out. It's like, well, you were basically on the verge of dropping out when I fell. But even harder in the virtual race where you can't even, just difficult because you can't see anyone really. All you see is a little tiny screen, and at least when you're racing head to head, you can kind of get a sense of what people are feeling. But so it was,
yeah. I mean, you never know. Like, you don't know if those 5 people remaining are going to be there till 12 hours from now, or if they're going to be gone in 3 hours.
Well, and like Biggs, when I was at Biggs, it was down to I was on my last lap, and I was, I just hit 150 miles, and I was going out on the road, and I basically got left behind. Everyone left me, and I thought I was the last one, and it was just sort of demoralizing. I was like, well, my body was aching, and I was like, I think I'm done. And I just kind of stopped and stood there for a little while, and then I turned around and started walking back. And this dude comes comes up behind me who had been behind me, and he was, still going. I was like, should have kept going because there's one, like if I would have beat him. But, I dropped out. I turned around and went home. So it's difficult. It's a difficult thing.
Yeah, for sure. And then, then if you do stay in, look, in hindsight, it's like, dang, I would have had to gone.
Yeah.
How many more hours? Like 20 more hours. Like, okay, probably wouldn't have happened.
Right. Well, that's why you say you're done when you're done, because you're like, well, I just barely made it in this time. How am I going to do 20 more of these things? But that's when you gotta get through your head that like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because even Mike Wardian had a really bad patch at 3 a.m., like 3 hours after I finished, and he I think he even did walk back, or like he was like doing a small loop, and like after one loop, he was like telling his wife he was going to drop, and then he just she said something, he got motivated, and then he went for another 15 hours or whatever. So like it can turn around. That's the hope. Everyone hopes for that.
So Gabe, obviously you may not even know the finish here, and Michael and John, feel free to chime in if I'm misleading the story in any way. But basically there were two final runners left, Mike Wardian and Radek Bruner. I think it was lap 59 at the time. Radek basically was in his starting corral at the start of the bell, but he did not start his treadmill. Obviously, being a virtual backyard ultra, this is where things get dicey compared to making a physical event. In the rules themselves, it said that runners had to be on the treadmill to as their corral, to be back in the corral, which that is their corral, so that makes sense. So he was there, but 2 points above that in the rules, it also said that you had to start the treadmill, which he did not do for almost a minute and a half afterwards. And then he decided to start running. And at that point, Laz and everyone kind of just freaked out, and that's how he was disqualified in the end. So he was still there. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen anything. I don't know if he said it was a technical error. I don't know if he just didn't know. I don't know if it was a mental lapse. We're not sure at this point. The crazy part, and John actually brought this up to me at some point, even though he's on the treadmill and he didn't push start on the treadmill, what if he just leaned forward or took one step on the treadmill? Does that count as starting the loop? I mean, it's all so technical. Obviously he ended up being disqualified, and that's how Mike Wardian won. What are you guys' opinions, thoughts, hot takes on this whole issue? Whoever wants it.
Gabe, you can start.
Well, so someone was telling me that fellow was using a different clock, and his clock was apparently off. The two clocks weren't syncing, and so he thought he was actually starting when he was supposed to, or something. I mean, it's kind of funny that a technical. I mean, going into the event, I thought, boy, this is you're kind of playing with fire, because because I was even unsure of the ability to keep track of stuff and actually how it was going to work. So the fact that it kind of came down to that in the end is not that surprising. Also, a little bit of me thinks, well, someone was out there. I don't think Laz wants his event to be the one to go 300 miles. So Laz may have pulled the plug somewhere. But because I mean, and running on the treadmill, I was trying to figure out. I was thinking it was a decent advantage, just because you could have your control of your surroundings, light. You would not have any darkness. Now you're on a treadmill for 3 days, but
yeah, and treadmill is also a lot more low impact, and it
easier on your legs. Mm-hmm.
Easier, and there's less strain overall because the belt pulls you depending on how you're running. So there's definitely advantages, and I think that's one of the big things that I think I was most upset about with this whole process was that it was called on a technicality of something that could be argued that way. Because to me, with everything going on in the world and the way with this pandemic and the purpose of this race was to bring people together to run and have fun, I think it should have gone out in an more ethical way, and they should have been able to maybe finish out strong with a drop of I'm done, instead of something so technical on this style of race. If it makes sense if it was like a real race at a real place that had real stakes with real money, then maybe, but I don't think it was appropriate for the style of race that was happening.
Yeah, I mean, if it would have been me, I would have just been like, just okay. He started a minute late. Like that's just his. I mean, his disadvantage for his, you're going to stand there for a minute, then you're a minute and on the course.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have just keep running, but whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Mike Wardian was basically pleading, like, hey, can we just keep running? Like, let's just go for the record. I mean, he was literally just like, let's just.
Yeah, I think they were after the record. I mean, that's what.
Yeah, he's like, can I keep running? Can I keep running? Can I keep running? And they're like, no, you can run one more. He's like, but that's not the record. So why would I do that?
Right.
Yeah. Micheal, what are your thoughts here?
So we've discussed this, Wes, you and I, in our personal text group. So I want to, before I say anything, because I might say some things that might just seem mean, but the Quarantine Backyard Ultra organizers did a phenomenal job, right? Like
Agreed.
they pulled this thing together in less than 2 weeks. They assembled some supporters and some elite athletes that really hyped it up. They got 2,400 entrants, 1,500 starters, and the whole like system with the Zoom and the YouTube feed and the publicity was top of the line. It worked out way better than I thought it ever would have with the Zoom and the Strava and the way they kept track of things and the way they engaged with the runners and the public was phenomenal. And I think this was the first time they've directed a race. And this is a personal peak. Forget exactly what they do, coaching services, maybe some, personal coaching in Canada. So they did great. Like I use the analogy of a parent and a child. Like you can love the child, but they can still disappoint you. That doesn't mean you don't like them anymore. So my personal thoughts is that I thought it was a really bad call the way they handled this for they tried to uphold some technicalities of the Backyard Ultra rules, the LAS rules, which I call them now. They tried to uphold some of those, or they changed some to fit this virtual format, but then they chose some other ones to be super strict about. And that one that ended up costing Mike and Radek to go further was the one that you had to start when the bell started. And I think as soon as you brought a treadmill into the equation, it completely changes the rules. It completely alters what the corral means. Obviously, in a course format with everyone in the same course, there's a spray painted box that everyone has to be in when the bell rings. But then again, everyone has to leave when the bell rings. But here's some ambiguity. So how long do people have to leave the box? Even in a real life Backyard Ultra, is it 5 seconds? What if someone's in the very back of the box and then they're crawling to get out and it takes them a minute? Okay, hypotheticals here. Obviously, I'm all about hypotheticals. Like, are they DQ'd? They're making forward progress. So, like, I think there's some ambiguity in that part. Those whoever decides those amount of seconds that someone has until they move, like Radek and other treadmill guys were spending 15 to 30 seconds getting their treadmill up and running, getting their watch synced to their treadmill, however that works. I don't know how treadmills and watches and iPads sync up, whatever. But like someone gave them some time. And Harvey Lewis, I saw he posted after the race, is that he asked this question before the race to the race organizers: how long do you have until you have to start? And the race directors, he claims in his post, relaying what he said, that they said anywhere up to 50 seconds. So who determines the 50 seconds? Okay, like you're leaving so much out there to interpret, where this race is supposed to be black and white. And luckily, in a true Backyard Ultra format, a non-virtual race, it is black and white. The race director's standing there, the runners are on the line, and if someone stands there for a minute, you pull them. That's the rules.
What if you cross the starting line and then you sit down for a minute?
Laz says that's fine. I clarified that with Laz, and he said there would be no advantage, which I would actually think there would be an advantage. Say you grab your shoes and you don't tie them.
Oh yeah, right.
And or you grab, you're trying to get your watch on or trying to get your belt on or whatever. Like you can. So that doesn't even make sense to me. Like, so here's another part of this disqualification is, say Radek would have made his corral in his living room. He could have walked to his treadmill, got on it, and stood there for however long he wanted to, if he was able to still complete his hour. Mm-hmm. So it's just he didn't time out. He didn't stay in his living room asleep. He didn't fall asleep on the treadmill, like some people claim. He was coherent. You could tell he was like getting stuff, like he was getting his iPad. Like it was just like routine for him. You can tell that he was not trying to cheat the system. And both runners were going to be able to go much long. Well, obviously, like it looked like they were. Why not let them duke it out? And also, I'll just jump to this. Laz's reaction was completely out of line, in my opinion. He was on the Zoom feed just like we are. There was actually 4 people because it was Mike and Radek, Laz, and the organizers on the screen. And Laz is there with his wife, Sandra, and they were great. I loved his commentary. It was great to have Laz's input, but he was not the race director of this race. He throws his hands up and walks off the screen saying it should be over. He doesn't have that call. He's not the race director, but he impacted the call. There's no doubt, in my opinion, that he impacted the race director's decision to pull Radek. Okay. And so that's not fair, for one. And I think, and the whole thing kind of like ended really sour, in my opinion. Like I said, love the race organization and the way it all worked out, but really hated that ending in the end.
Well, but I don't think they should have, even if they would have kept going, could have said it was a backyard record, because I think one of the most important rules in backyard is the 12 hours on the trail and the 12 hours on the road. And that makes a big difference, switching from road to trail.
I agree. And that's another thing too, is with the rule bending. So that was another rule that they altered to fit this format, was that they said you can run any loop you wanted to. You can switch it up every time if you wanted to, and you can receive 8 on the course. Right. Why did you make that a rule? Why was that a rule? Like, why was that changed from the original Backyard Ultra rules and not this other thing?
Yeah. A lot of the backyard guys I've talked to, they're like, I was doing great on the trail, and then I hit the road and my body just shut down because of the road. Or the other way around, they're like, I was tearing up the road, and then I hit that trail, and the rocks and the roots, just did me in. And so I think there's, a true backyard is 12 hours of road, 12 hours of trail.
With the same vert, everyone on the same train,
I felt guilty whenever on the second night I decided to, or during the second day, I did a few hours on my gravel route during the second day, and then I was like, this is getting tough. So I switched back over to that road loop. I felt guilty. I was like, okay, I sort of feel like I'm cheating the Backyard Ultra system, but it was within the rules.
Wardian, wasn't he running? He was running like how many loops to make his 4 miles? Just flat road.
Yeah, exactly. And the treadmill. That's easy. Like it's kind of funny, the whole disqualification thing. I went from like hating that there was still a bunch of treadmill guys left in it to like feeling sorry for the treadmill guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, Michael, I think you hit it right on the head. Obviously, I kind of hashed out a lot of my points on this topic in the rundown this week that hasn't been released yet. It will be out sooner this week. But basically, I said the same thing. Like the event organizers, they did a great job. I personally never heard of Personal Peak Endurance before this event. Had no idea who they were, but I 100% believe that right after Laz ended his stream, he got on the phone with those race directors and basically said, hey guys, shut it down. It's over. It won't count for anything. not that it would have counted for anything anyway, in my opinion. I think the fact that it's virtual anyway makes it an asterisk already. And so like, even if they would have kept going or not gone, I just think that he 100% impacted that race, maybe for his own benefit. It's just my opinion.
Some conspiracy theory, because we don't know he called them, but you have to believe that his commentating presence throughout the event was impactful.
The way that the personal peak people like hop back on the stream afterwards and like were super emotional laying out the news. I don't think they just came to that decision by themselves and just got emotional because of it. I think they had to have been impacted, been like, imagine like if news is broken to you in a certain way, it hits you harder. But like, if you decide that news yourself, I don't know if you'd react the same way. That's why I just think Laz hopped on the phone and called them off.
And something else too, okay, not to continue talking badly about anybody, but obviously everyone was tired, even the race directors. But so, Radek's in the Czech Republic, his English wasn't great. He was speaking English into the camera, but he wasn't talking to the camera like Mike Wardian was. Some people don't even, like, we haven't heard from Radek. I don't think he's released a statement. And like you said, Wes, this doesn't mean anything, but tell Radek or Mike Wardian that this doesn't mean anything. Like, it's a personal achievement that does mean a lot. Like, I'll take this achievement, to my grave and really value the experience. And it's a big growth experience. But like, some people speculate that his feed wasn't up to time with the real feed. And that's something that we can talk about too. Like, back into the 20s or early 30s, at some point, Personal Peak's feed got off by 1 minute, and everyone got an extra minute. Like, my watches and my clock in my house, at some point it was 3:01 or it was 4:01 when we got started, and not on the hour. And that was because they had some kind of feed issue, and they decided to extend it for everybody. Obviously, it's for everybody, but I was at the door ready to go on the hour. And I was like, okay, is my feed stuck at 1 minute, or do I actually have a minute left? And like, okay, that would never happen at a backyard ultra. That would never happen. And so they were able to be flexible there, but not be flexible when, I don't know, man. I'm trying to put myself in Radek's shoes and like imagine how I'd feel. And I just feel really, really bummed, just so sad. If I know in my mind that I was coherent and ready to go.
Yeah, I guess that's the one aspect that is yet to be seen. We just don't know yet, and I'm sure eventually it'll come out, his side of the story, if it hasn't already. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You just hate to see it end that way. Obviously, the fact that it was virtual, obviously, there was a slight chance that it could end that way. But Gabe, what do you think the differences were between a physical backyard ultra and a virtual one? What made this one easier or harder than the
issue? I don't have an issue. Like, I don't need a bunch of people around me to motivate me. So the fact that it was virtual, my motivation really wasn't lacking as far as a race atmosphere. Like, I don't think I really need the race atmosphere. The stream was enough for me. So I mean, like I said, it was really cool just to be racing roads that I have run my whole life. Since I was like 12, 13 years old. And now I'm running, like, I can remember there was this one winter, like every day I'd run that route, the exact route that I ran at 4 miles. And I'd run that 4 miles every day. And I just thought I was a badass. And then, like, 2 days ago, I ran it 37 times without stopping. And so it was just kind of surreal, the growth and the, so it was pretty cool.
Definitely. You kind of touched on it, but I know you guys both had awesome support from family and friends throughout the race. How important was it to having them there for you guys? Michael, you can kick this one off.
Yeah, that was cool. Like when I told my wife I was for sure doing it the night before, I was like, I told her I don't expect too much from her. And, like I was willing and able to kind of self-support myself for, at least like the first day. But, like they ended up doing so much for me. And, like she had, I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they're just, they've been home for like a month. And so they're stir crazy anyway. So like, my wife's keeping track of them and entertaining them. Meanwhile, she's bouncing back in when I'm getting back with hot, I didn't have any gels or goos or, artificial type sweetener food stuff, whatever. It was all like real food. And she was basically eventually preparing all that for me. So huge support. But it was also really cool because it was in my own house, very convenient. Had the stove, had the rice cooker, and had the coffee maker. Had her pantry right there. But it was cool. Yeah, like my kids, we had a whistle and a bell, and like my daughter was like wanting to blow the whistle whenever the whistle on the screen would go off and ring the bell when I got back and stuff. So yeah, it would probably not be possible at a normal race. And it was kind of cool. Like I was running this race when the kids got put to bed 2 nights in a row, and I still got like my good night hugs in between loops and stuff. And you think about them when you're out there, and you think about it when you come back into the house and it's 3 a.m. and they're in like literally their window is like right next to where I'm starting from, and trying to make sure you don't slam the door when you exit the house for your 4 a.m. loop. And yeah, just incredible. And then like my parents live next door, and eventually my sister and her boyfriend and my mom and dad kind of like came out to the end of the driveway every time I came back in, waiting for me, and they could see me sort of down the road a ways, and they would cheer for me. And it was like obviously we're all kind of in quarantine right now and trying not to be around many people, even our family members, which is tough for a lot of people. And the people that I am around are my family members, since we're all sort of on the same property. And so having their support was the crowd. It was the race atmosphere, and they did a phenomenal job, and couldn't have asked for anything more. I don't think it took away from, I don't think the atmosphere was anything that took away from my, I don't think I could have went any further. I don't think, if I was in a real race during this moment or during this race, maybe with some more experience now I could. But yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. So like my wife, she was with me during the day. And then my brother and my dad took over through the first night. And then my dad went to bed, and my brother stayed up all night. And then Heather, my wife, she came back at 6 a.m. And then also with my youngest daughter, who was not sleeping. So they came back up. And then, they were there all during the day. And then like I also like it was a virtual race, and I knew there was, I had virtual fans too, there were people out who were watching the feed and cheering on me. And like when they voted, I guess they were doing voting to move runners to the elite screen, and I got voted onto the elite screen, and that like really just tore me up basically. Like my loop, I cried. I think half my loop, I was out there running on my loop, and I was like, man, I'm running this loop that I've run all my life, and I got people voting me on to the racing elite runners on a road on my house. It was just kind of crazy.
I'm getting the picture that you're a big softie, Gabe.
Well, I am. I run on emotion. I really run on emotion. So
that's either a blessing or a curse.
And I wear it on my sleeve too. So I don't do a poker face very well.
Nice.
So remember that, Mohican.
I'm either a D and F or way out in front.
Richard actually had a quick question here. Was having the family there at the house and being at the house, did it make it harder to go back out compared to a standard backyard ultra where like you are isolated and you're not just, the family's not right there. You just can't go in and call it quits and hug your kids. You know what I mean? Like, did that have an impact on you guys at all?
I didn't notice that really. Like I never was like, man, I want to be done because I just want to go hug my kids or sleep in my bed. It was really nice when I was done to just literally walk in my house and fall in my bed. I mean, so, but no, I didn't really notice.
Yeah, I don't think for me it was like routine, like heard the 3-minute bell, like got my shoes back on, heard the 2-minute bell, get my watch off the charger, heard the 1-minute bell, stand up, like sort of like there was no decision. I was just doing it off of routine, and later on when it got tough, it never really like occurred to me that I should stay there because I wanted to be in the comfort of my home. It was more like my wife was pushing me out the door at that point. So, and now, yeah.
And I knew my wife wasn't going to let me just to stop. Like I was going to have to be like basically dead before she was going to be like, okay, you can be done.
That's awesome, guys. The stories you go for it, Micheal.
I just want to bring up some food questions real fast.
Yeah, go for it.
So thanks to my wife, but I would also say that I had some of the most interesting food of all the competitors all around the world. True backyard ultra style here. My wife's brother came to fish. We have a big pond, a 2.5-acre pond in front of our house. And he was fishing and he skinned all the fish, and my wife fried the fish up during that first day. And I had some truly fried backyard fish during the race. And that was cool. And I had some backyard dandelion cookies, and just completely playing up the backyard theme there.
Mm-hmm.
That's
reliant.
That's crazy. You're almost better in that atmosphere.
But it didn't pay off because that fish was later on the road, along with the dead rabbit.
One final question here from Annie Lang before we wrap up. Gabe, you've done a bajillion backyard alt races. Which one was the hardest mentally and physically? And was this one the hardest just because it was your longest?
Let's see. No, this was the easiest. And then the next easiest was Biggs. And then I think the hardest was probably Bob's backyard, physically and mentally. Physically, it was just a mud hole that just sucked the energy out of me. And then I was racing Olivier, who was just like a machine, and like you'd look over there at him and he was just like, I'm gonna stop. And I wanted, and my goal was to win, so to have I wanted the golden ticket so I could go to Biggs. And I was just, so then to not win and be facing Olivier, basically, it was just sort of devastating. And then Micheals last year at Ohio Backyard, I was not mentally prepared for a backyard because I'd never done one. And so I actually got to 100 miles and felt perfectly fine, but I just was done running, and I didn't want to be running anymore. And so I just started hammering and just was running as fast as I could because I was like, you know what, I'm just going to run as hard as I can and just see who I can blow up. And I blew them all up except one.
Yeah, that was an interesting.
Yeah, but it was just because I was mentally, I was like, I don't want to be here and I don't want to be running anymore. But yeah. I wasn't ready to quit. I wasn't going to just stop. So, but looking back on that one, I really wished if I had run that one knowing what I know now, I would have gone much farther.
I would have loved that too.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, Gabe, real quick, your first backyard ultra, you ran one, and the next one you beat your PR by 1 loop. Then you had a huge jump, obviously up to 150. And this time you beat your PR by 1 loop. So your next Backyard Ultra is going to be a massive jump again, and we're super excited to see it. Michael,
Bob's Big Timber.
Bob's Big Timber coming back year 2. Michael, obviously, this was your first race. You absolutely crushed it. I know that you said you're on the wait list for bigs, and I know that if you get to go down there in September or October, whenever the race is going to be held, that you're going to absolutely crush it. So we're excited to follow you guys in your adventures. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Remember, we are back tomorrow with another show, 8 p.m. with Eric Anderson and Bobby Harrington. These 2 North Carolina runners have run some of the hardest races and the biggest races on the East Coast. So be sure to join us tomorrow. Just a reminder that you can catch us live on YouTube or take us on the go via Apple Podcasts. If you know anyone who you think would be a great guest for the show, like these 2 gentlemen were, let us know in the comments below. Gabe and Michael, thank you guys so much again for joining us, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yeah, thanks for the support, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you guys.